Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 44 of the Not Only Running podcast. It's me, Jill, and today's episode is a reflection on the past 365 days of wearing my Whoop device. For many of you out there that may not know what a Whoop device is, it is a wearable device that tracks metrics such as heart rate variability, stress during the day to give you a nice stress score. It tells you your sleep quality, quantity, and the breakdown of it in terms of how much REM that you're getting. Based on the information that you feed it the day before, it'll provide you with a readiness to train the following day. It also gives you weekly and monthly reports based on the information that you feed it. So also every day you will fill in like a little report to say what you have done the day before. So things like if you've traveled the day before, if you've drank alcohol, if you've shared a bed, if you felt stressed, if you felt like in control of your life, all of these metrics, which you also have a say in what you want to be asked. So you make them most applicable to you. And the most important one, the reason why I purchased the Whoop in the first place this particular year was to see the variability of my almost like my readiness to perform based in and around my menstrual cycle. If you've been listening to the previous podcast, you know that the menstrual cycle is something that we have chatted about before, and also something that I talk a lot about to the female athletes that I train, because obviously it is something that does affect the way that we feel. It does affect the way that our body operates on a physiological level, and not only that, on a psychological level as well. Because if we know that we are getting it, sometimes it can put us on the back foot, and it can almost be a deterrent to train or a deterrent to push. So for me, I've never been one to shy away from not training in and around my cycle, even if I mightn't have felt great. My thought process is till today to always, if you've got your cycle and you're not feeling great, you have an option. You can either push your way through it, which isn't going to be good, or you can modify it to base what you need to do on the day. You can also keep almost like keep a little bit of a trend or an overview of what's been happening, and then make any subsequent modifications from that. And that's what I wanted to do with my Whoop, and it's great because I have the data from that. So over the past 12 months, I'm extremely regular. I get my period every 28 days. And I know that even before wearing the Whoop, that I know that the 2 days before my period, my energy levels are pretty crap. I haven't got a lot of energy. My mood can be quite low. I can get, a little bit in your own head, and, it's almost like it's the end of the world. But as soon as I get my cycle, boom, voila, back on top of the world again, and I can enjoy the next sort of 28 days of my life, until those 2 days come again and the whole world is falling apart. That is the trend, and I wanted to see if obviously my Whoop was kind of backing up that information. What I will say is that it did to a certain extent, because the previous days, so the days prior to my cycle, my HRV tended to drop. That being said, there were some times where training might have went better than expected once I kind of committed to it and went into it. Once I started it, the feelings of, oh my God, the dread, not wanting to do it, kind of quickly dissipated. But then there were other times that it was just like, you know what, not today, this isn't happening. We're going to take an easier option, or instead of going out on that high intensity interval run or that threshold run, I'm just going to do my easy run on the day. So that was my biggest take home. I just wanted to see, like, was, things like HRV, was that reflective in what I was feeling, and then also for my performance. Speaking of which, if you've been obviously listening to the podcast or even on top of the social media, you know that in January time I completed the Riyadh Marathon there, and I probably told most of the people that actually ran there on the day that I got my period the day after. So that was always my biggest concern, and I did have a bit of a freak out. I was checking my Flow, which is a tracker app for my cycle. And the month before my period came, 2 days late. And I said to myself, oh great, that's good, then maybe it's going to push it another 2 days. But lo and behold, it didn't. So that was in the back of my mind to a certain extent. I'm not going to say that it didn't affect it at all. It did. I was a little bit apprehensive, a little bit worried about it, that maybe I got it on the morning of, or it came early or it didn't come. All of these things were going through my head, because I knew that, if my period was coming when it was meant to be, that the chances of me in the lead up to it being a little bit in my own head and almost like talking me out of things, I didn't want that to happen. And thankfully on the day, it didn't. But the next day my period came, and I just kind of laughed to myself and said, you know what, that's mad, because you were so much in your own head and you've done it. So what that gave me was kind of like the fuel and the ammunition now to use that as an experience moving forward, that if I do have another big race coming up, which I do throughout the year, even if my little menstrual cycle decides to interrupt that in any way, it's not going to interfere too much with my performance. And again, there is a previous podcast as well that we talk about that, and your menstrual cycle, how it affects your training versus how it affects your performance. And there's also a good body of literature and research out there that says, even though it is a physiological thing that it can change, if you are racing on the days either before your period when you might be feeling a little bit low, or even on during your period where you mightn't feel great, the psychological aspect can kind of oversede, or it's sort of like supersede the physiological aspect, and you still can perform really well. Paula Radcliffe did, I believe, set the world record in the London Marathon while she was on her period. So if she could do it, I could do it, and I did do it. So I digress. I have moved away from my Whoop wearable device. But in terms of tracking heart rate variability around my cycle, I was impressed. It was pretty consistent, to be fair, albeit the readings might have been consistent. It wasn't always what I felt, which is for me a bit of a, still a bit confusion. Now, I don't know, there were times throughout the year that I might have been on holiday and my head might have been further away from focusing on what was going on internally, so almost distracted me from what was going on, which then led me to believe that, a lot of the times the symptoms that we feel or how we feel about, training around the cycle can be, within our own heads. That's probably my biggest take home away from that, from tracking HRV. The things that I didn't really like about it, and it's more of me, from like a personal perspective, that if I woke up in the morning and my recovery was in the red for whatever reason, I kind of got a little bit annoyed, because I was just like, well, I failed yesterday. I failed in my recovery, but even though I did sleep and I did thought that I slept well, my body just hasn't recovered well enough, but I've done all the good things and I feel okay. I didn't like something telling me something that I wasn't feeling. So that used to get in my head as well. And Laura always used to laugh and go like, you're in a bad mood now because you're in the red. And I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of seeing red now, because it's not what I was feeling. So that's another reason why I think, sometimes less is often more. And if you are a person that is really, really fixated on like your heart rate variability being low or anything like that then maybe you should take that away from it, because where these wearables, are great in certain things, there is a level of, they mightn't be 110% accurate. So a second take home from that for me is that I am quite swayed with information that's given to me, even though it mightn't actually be 100% reflective in what I'm feeling. So from that, I have said from the outset that I won't be continuing on with the Whoop. I think my past year experience has been enough for me to collect some information and to kind of give me that to move forward. Other than that, it was good. I do think you do need to give it time. You do need to, commit to filling the forms in every morning. And like most things, if you do it correctly, then, I've come to the end of the year knowing that I've got the most out of it. I've got the report side of it. I've made my own interpretations from it. And then my action steps from that, what I'll be able to do. And pretty much like I did whenever I started, is that, I am pretty in tune with how I feel on a day-to-day basis, especially when it comes around my menstrual cycle. I know that it mightn't be, religiously the same every single month, but where I know that I don't have the mojo to go and push hard, I'm not going to do that, and I'm going to be okay with that. And the other thing is, when I wake up in the morning, based on how I'm feeling, it's probably an accurate representation of it, whether or not Whoop tells me or not, and not to get so fixated on certain things. But If someone was to ask me would I recommend it, I would have to ask, why are you wanting to use it, for what reason? If it is something along the lines of, well, I just want to see trends and interpretations and they're going to commit to it 100%, then I think it is. Yeah, I think it's a nice little tool to see. But I think once you've done it for a year, the likelihood of me wanting to continue on with it based on who I am and what I'm doing at the minute, I just don't think it's worth my reinvestment. It was worth the initial investment, but not worth the reinvestment, because I would also like to side note that Garmin does also give me similar readings in terms of heart rate, sleep, and sleep quality, and it's pretty on par with the Whoop. Now, last thing that I'm going to say, and side note, is that calorie burn between the two wearables is ridiculously different. You can be talking anywhere between a 500 to 800 calorie difference between Whoop and Garmin. So I would personally not recommend using a wearable device to check calorie burn. And that there has been proven in the research that wearable devices are not 100% accurate in that. So I'm going to leave that there. And I hope that you've enjoyed listening to this short little overview of my year of Whoop. And if you've got any questions about a wearable device, or you're thinking of investing in it, but you want to have, you have a specific question, by all means, send it through. And I hope that you have enjoyed.